Hey guys, this is Fierce, and today the topic is 1 vs 1 laning fundamentals and mechanics. The first topic I'm going to talk about is the positioning of the creeps in your lane. The ideal positioning for the creeps in the mid lane should look like this. The melee creep should be on the staircase and your ranged creep should be on the high ground. This will allow you to last hit easily on the high ground while also being in the fog of war, which makes it harder for the opposing player to harass you. This also has the added benefit of forcing the enemy player to stand on the low ground if he wants to get last hits, which makes him lose vision of the common ganking routes behind him.
Denied. First blood.
So now that we've established that positioning of the creeps in the lane is important, let's talk about how to manipulate the positioning of the creeps. One way to manipulate the positioning of creeps is to block the creeps' progression. You can do this by moving your hero in short diagonal paths. You can also press the S key to make your hero stop moving and then move forward again immediately after. On the Radiant side, there is something that people are calling the Arteezy spot, which makes it easier to block creeps when they spawn. If you're not standing in that spot when the creeps spawn, the creeps will split up around the tower, making you delay your creep block. As for the off lane, you can choose to block the creeps in a manner that only one creep advances, or you can block all of them like you would in the mid lane. In the safe lane, you can't start blocking the creeps when they spawn because they are too fast. You can start blocking them when they get to your tier 2 tower. Another way to manipulate the positioning of the creeps is by tanking the creeps where you want to freeze the lane. You can also drag the creeps a little to the side so it doesn't get in the tower's attack range. You can also alter the positioning of creeps by drawing their aggro. Creep aggro has a range of 500, so if you're within 500 range of the creeps and you attack an enemy hero, the enemy creeps within 500 range of you will start attacking you. If the enemy player pushes your lane hard and you have multiple creeps attacking your tower, attack the creeps to draw their aggro and bring them towards your next creep wave. You can do some pretty interesting things with aggro, such as only aggroing 1 or 2 creeps to draw them away from the enemy hero. This is pretty useful when you're a melee hero or if you're at a hit point disadvantage. If you're ever at a disadvantage in terms of creep positioning, you can attempt to bring them to a more favorable position by constantly drawing their aggro. Demon doesn't use the so-called Arteezy spot and loses to Dark Falco's dire side creep block. He moves close to the creeps and draws their aggro by attacking Dark Falco. Notice how after he draws aggro from the creeps, he is able to reset the aggro. You can reset aggro by attacking an allied unit, by being outside the 500 aggro range, or by making the creeps lose vision of your hero. And as we can see here, he has some really good creep positioning for the second creep wave. Now that you know how to manipulate the positioning of the creeps, let's incorporate some harassing into the mix. The easiest time to harass the enemy hero is when they are last hitting creeps. Also, whenever you get a significant creep advantage, you should be standing right next to your creeps and attacking the enemy hero. The enemy player would not be able to trade hits with you because they would end up tanking the creeps and your hero. The problem with standing too close to the creeps though is that you will aggro them if you attack an enemy hero. So it's better to cast spells when you're in this position, as casting spells on enemy heroes will not aggro the creeps. Another way to make creeps ignore your aggressive behavior is to initiate a right-click harass outside the creep's 500 aggro range. Notice how KZZ does an instant aggro reset by entering the Fog of War. Whenever you have an AoE spell, you should always be accomplishing more than one thing with that spell. You have to maximize the efficiency of your mana usage. When you use a spell, you should be getting multiple creep kills or getting a creep kill and also hurting the enemy hero. Probably the hardest harassing mechanic will be understanding ranges for when your opponent wants to be aggressive. This way, you can pull back before they hit you, but this act of trying to harass you puts them out of position, and when they realize that they're out of position, they have to return to a safer position. This means that you can turn around and punish them for their misplay if you can anticipate when they want to turn back. Or at the very least, it means you can trade hits instead of getting harassed for free. This sniper understands my range very well. I just tried to cast Shadow Strike on him, but he instantly pulled back. He even tries to hit me afterwards, but I knew that was coming, so I pulled back also. Now I know that I'm not going to be trying that again. So what am I going to do instead? I'm going to leave one of my creeps as bait and see if he falls for it. And of course, I'm going to follow up with right clicks as well. Once you build a hit point advantage like I have now, you should play more aggressively as you can afford to trade hits while your opponent cannot. Whenever you get a good advantage, you should start to zone the enemy player. Let's look at another example. I have level 2 and the Shadow Fiend is still level 1. I know he still has 0 CS, so he has garbage for right click damage. I'm gonna start trucking on him. I'm gonna push my advantage and I'm gonna let him know who's boss. Whenever you get any kind of an advantage, you have to start pushing it. This was also a good example of understanding the tower's attack range. It's very important to know what the tower's attack range and aggro range are, so you can maximize the amount of harass hits you can dish out. Every attack counts. An important mechanic you should learn is the attack stall. You can do this by spamming the stop key. This is a psychological technique which makes your opponent's attack creeps early, which will secure you the last hit. It works especially well against inexperienced players, and of course, you will need to have auto attack enabled to utilize this technique. On some heroes, it's good to have auto attack on, and on other heroes, it's good to have auto attack off, which is why I have a keybind in my auto executable file which can toggle it on and off depending on the various situations I come across. Heroes like Sniper and Gyrocopter who have instant attacks should have auto attack disabled. One more important mechanic is called kiting, or as Dota 1 players call it, orb walking, or as StarCraft players call it, stutter stepping. Basically, your attack has a cooldown, so instead of just standing there with your hero, why not do something useful such as getting into a better position? This will help you get additional attacks off and it will also help you avoid damage. And the last topic I want to cover is using the courier. It doesn't matter if you have 10 or 20 more CS than the other player if you don't use your gold. Whoever uses their money and receives their items first will have a pretty good advantage over the other player. And on this topic, whoever bottle crows more will have an even better advantage. Bottle crowing allows for a more aggressive playstyle because of the constant source of mana and hit points. You can trade hits and spam your spells pretty much without worry. To finish this video, let's watch an amazing performance by Ice 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 against S4. He starts off with a great creep block which forces S4 to play defensively from the low ground while Ice 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 has a much easier time last hitting from the high ground. S4 is doing what he can, attempting to manipulate the positioning of the creeps with aggro mechanics. As a result of the good creep block and defensive play from S4, S4 only has the experience from 3.5 creeps, which is not enough to become level 2. On the other hand, Ice 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 is already level 2. Then he aggroes the creeps and flips them so the Radiant creeps are on the Dire side of the map and the Dire creeps are on the Radiant side. Then S4 and Ice 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 aggro the creeps at the same time, but S4 is at a creep disadvantage and he finds himself tanking 3 creeps. Ice 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 takes advantage of the mistake and chases him up the hill and gets every possible attack in without taking unnecessary damage from the tower. Look here, 2 very low hit point creeps. S4 wants these real bad, but Ice 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 wants to leave these creeps alive to use them as bait. And then Ice 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 makes his move as he alternates right clicks with spell casts, cycling through his attack's cooldown as well as repositioning his hero in between these actions. There's no way that you're going to be able to do everything you see in this video right away. Start by incorporating one aspect of this video into your play. Once you get used to that, add another aspect of this video into your play, and so on and so forth. Inch by inch, you will become a stronger and better player.